Hey guys, hello gorgeous. Back with another Karate Kid series review, taking a look at Karate Kid Part 3 this time. And the general consensus about this movie seems to be that it is not as good as the first one or the second one either. As I said in my previous reviews, loved the first one, thought the second one was okay, and I think the third one completes a perfect downward arc for the Karate Kid trilogy of the 80s. I think when you talk about movie series that go to the well once too often, the Karate Kid trilogy is a perfect example of that. It's a movie that Part 1 is amazing. It's really heartwarming, touching, enlightening, and inspiring. And I think Ralph Macchio described what happened to this franchise best in a recent interview he did while promoting Cobra Kai. He said that when he came out of the theater for the first Karate Kid movie, and there were tons and tons of people there, and everyone was happy, and they were very excited about more, the producer said, yeah, we're going to be doing a bunch of these. And that's unfortunate that the driving force behind the trilogy wasn't to keep trying to enlighten and inspire people, to serve as basically a movie version of Mr. Miyagi, teaching people how to deal with life, how to own their life. So often in Hollywood when a movie makes it big, and the first movie in a series can be like the first Karate Kid movie. It can be very heartwarming, touching, inspiring. And unfortunately, when that connects with a lot of people and it sells a lot of tickets, the people who own the rights, they go, we want to sell more tickets, we want to make more money. And they never say, is there more gas in the tank? Is there more story to tell? Maybe there was more story to tell, but the story we got in Karate Kid 3 wasn't the story that I wanted to see. In Karate Kid 3, Daniel seems to have regressed, maybe even worse than he was at the beginning of Karate Kid Part 1, because at the beginning of the first movie, I thought they portrayed him as having a lot of empathy, a good heart, a little rough around the edges, quick to fight, a chip on his shoulder. But that's just the situation he was in. His father had died, he had been displaced, and he's not going to take anything from anybody. In Karate Kid 3, he is just really insufferable and annoying. And I thought that there's something very wrong when a character that I had grown to like so much in the first two movies just wouldn't stop yammering. I mentioned the phrase going to the well once too often. I don't think that phrase really describes Karate Kid 3 for myself, because if I'm going to a well to get some more water that I've been able to get water at twice before, and there's no water there, then I just shrug and I go, oh, well, there's no water this third time, I'll just go home. And that's pretty easy. But Karate Kid 3 for me was not easy. It was a chore. I actually had to watch it in 3 different sittings over 3 different nights because it was just so far removed from the first one. Now, I'm a detail person and I'm a tone person. And when I really connect with a first movie in a series, when something really resonates, a part 1 resonates with me, then I hope that that tone that connected with me continues in the second and third movie. And the story can be different, the challenges can be different, but I want the tone to remain the same. And again, Ralph Macchio, to quote him, his opinion of the third movie, they made a Karate Kid cartoon in the 80s, and that's what he sees Karate Kid 3 as a live action cartoon. There are bits of wisdom that Mr. Miyagi once again instills in Daniel, but I wanted to see something different for the third part in the Karate Kid trilogy. I wanted to see something a little more similar to the original Star Wars trilogy, and you might think that Luke Skywalker became somewhat of a boring character in Return of the Jedi, but it's never bothered me. I loved it. I love the iron will and the resolve, the focus that Luke had in the third movie. He might not have been as entertaining as he was in the previous 2 movies, but I really like that solid determination. He was using the tools that he learned in the previous 2 movies, and we finally got to see a third movie where he employs those tools and that grace and that wisdom. And I wanted to see grace and wisdom employed by Daniel in this movie, and it just seems as though there's so little grace and wisdom that Daniel employs. He's duped by the evil Terry Silver. who is trying to gain revenge on Miyagi and Daniel. This was another mistake, I thought. The series is guilty of this, not bringing Elizabeth Shue back for part 2 in order to bring in a new love interest in part 2. And then they don't bring her back in part 3. They just come up with a new like interest. This time behind the scenes, Ralph Macchio appears to have requested that he not have a love interest in the third movie because he was married. And he didn't want to make his wife jealous. So that's why the relationship in the third movie is a platonic one. And I say whatever, it's just another sign that this guy can't hold on to a girl, and it keeps making the series seem to be declining. He should be learning things that make him an attractive person for a girl, someone who is strong and wise and powerful, and a girl would want to be dedicated to. And instead, the first girl leaves him for a football player, and the second girl leaves him for a dance contract or something like that. And it just seems as though this guy is not desirable. People don't want to be loyal to him in terms of relationships. I thought what the third movie should have been is what they're doing with Cobra Kai right now. It would have been a really interesting story to change the focus from Daniel and Miyagi to Johnny and his sensei, Kreese. Kreese is in this movie, but it's far too little. Daniel's mother is in this movie, but it's far too little. It's a quick cameo appearance, and apparently she only appeared upon Ralph Macchio's insistence. So it's just one thing after another of not bringing people back, not valuing their contribution to this series, and just saying, we can make one of these with just Miyagi and Daniel. That's all we need. And then they decided for the fourth one they didn't even need Daniel. But that's for a later review. But the story I wanted to see was the relationship between Johnny and Kreese, and have that be like a yin and yang to Daniel and Miyagi. That's not what we got here. We got a surrogate, Silver, who comes in, and he's the big bad villain, scenery-chewing, cartoon, ridiculous villain. Kreese was fairly ridiculous in the first movie as well. I guess that's part of that yin and yang. You have the very grounded and peaceful Miyagi, and they wanted to contrast that with a big cartoon villain in Kreese. But I think Silver takes it a little too high. And I just didn't enjoy seeing Daniel and Miyagi at odds through this whole film after having 2 films build such a beautiful relationship. It's such a rare thing in Hollywood. It was rare back then, and it's even rarer today to see such a wonderful, beautiful, pure relationship between a mentor and a student, and have it be ruined in the third movie with misunderstandings, with ego, with Daniel being a petulant brat. That type of behavior, if there was any place for it, it would have been in the first movie, and it's just disappointing to see him behave that way in the third movie. So if you're a Karate Kid completist, if you've heard great things about Cobra Kai and you feel like you need to watch all of the previous Karate Kid saga entries, then go for it. There are a few things in the Karate Kid Part 3 that get mentioned in Cobra Kai, so hats off to the makers of Cobra Kai who added those in, those little Easter eggs for the people who... there's people who love Karate Kid 3, and that's awesome. I'm happy for you. But there's people who hate Karate Kid 3 or really don't enjoy it. So even though I didn't enjoy Part 3, I'm glad that I watched it because I do get to enjoy the mentions of the history that are brought up in Cobra Kai. I like the fact that Cobra Kai includes all of it, warts and all. Another show that continued an old movie series, Ash vs. Evil Dead, for this first season at least, they didn't have the rights to Army of Darkness. And while I loved that first season of Ash vs. Evil Dead, it felt like a piece was missing. And it sucks when you have to work around legal issues. And it's just awesome that the people who are making Cobra Kai don't have to do that. And it's very cool, too, that they're respecting all of the entries of the Karate Kid saga, even the ones that don't seem to really garner much respect from the wide viewing audience. That's my Karate Kid 3 review. If you have some memories of Karate Kid 3 or lamentations that you would like to share, scroll down and go to town. And to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Nerdmas Day.